Hey frugal friends, I'm back at it out here again doing some more planting, and this time we're doing grapes. The reason I'm doing all this all at once is because these are bare roots, and if there's one rule I know of about bare roots, which I know a lot of rules, but the number one most important thing is probably that you plant them as soon as you possibly can. Now, of course, we have a couple of different options for that, and planting them outside if the weather permits is probably the most ideal scenario. You can also plant them in pots if the weather isn't, ideal, but it's actually a really nice day out here, so why not plant them out here? They're mostly dormant still, which is ideal again, but I do make sure that it has some sort of a sign of life. They don't have to have, buds that are opening or even, leaves or anything like that, although that's okay too, but they do have to show some sort of a sign of life like I've mentioned, otherwise I won't buy them. There's a couple of ways that you can check for that. One is you can actually break a piece of the twig to see if it snaps easily, and if it's dry and brittle, that's usually a sign that it's dead. And then another one would be if you kind of scrape away at the bark. If there's green underneath, that means it's alive. Personally, my favorite way to look for it is just if it has little, buds and things like that that are popping up. So let's talk about the spot where we're actually going to put these grapes before we actually plant them and all that. So the first thing is going to be site location. There are a couple of things that we have to consider. First of all, they definitely need full sun, and another thing they need is a lot of air circulation. So as you can see, this fence right here behind me is actually where I'm going to be planting mine, and this is going to offer a lot of air circulation. There's nothing in front of it, there's nothing behind it, So it'll get lots of sun and lots of air because grapes are susceptible to powdery mildew and a few other things, and so good air circulation will help keep them healthy. They also need their soil to be well draining. They usually don't like heavy clay soil that, causes them to stay wet a lot, and it needs to be about a neutral pH. So if you have acidic soil, you would probably have to raise the pH, and if you have alkaline soil like me, then you might have to add some amendments to, bring that pH down, so somewhere in that range. And they also need a trellis to grow on because grapevines, like the name implies, are vines, and so they do need something to grab onto. Personally, I prefer something that has like a smaller thing for them to grow on. If you have like lattice or something like that where it's wide wood and slats, the little tendrils they put out have trouble grabbing onto that. I mean, they still can, but I just think that something that has smaller things are easier for them to grab onto, and also it doesn't block their sun. So like trellis, with the big wooden slats would block a fair amount of sun. This would, obviously feed two birds with one feeder in that regard. It will not only make it easier for them to grab onto, but it would also aid in the air circulation and the sunlight and stuff like that. So I'm actually using welded wire. A lot of commercial farms will actually put up posts and then they'll run like wires across, and then they'll prune them back to where they just have those two little things. I'm going to have mine sort of double as a fence, although you do have to prune them, but this is a different video, but you do have to prune them for good fruit, so that's something to keep in mind, something that'll be easy to prune them on when they are growing here. Spacing is important, so most types of grapes need about a 5 to 10 foot spacing in between because they really do spread out. My spot, I'm going to be putting them 8 feet apart. There are lots of different types of grapes, of course, but basically, of course, we don't have time to go over all the different varieties, but basically if you're getting either European or American varieties, those ones can be planted that 5 to 10 feet apart. And then if you're getting muscadine version, the type they mainly plant down south, you would have to plant those much further apart since those do spread a lot more. So go for more like 15 feet apart on those. And again, these are the bare roots that Walmart sells. I'm a fan of them. I really do think that they work out pretty well. They're very affordable, especially compared to some of the others that are out there, and I'm on a budget, so I'm trying to get as much done as I can for the least amount of money possible. And to be honest, all of the money that I'm actually spending on my homestead, starting these different berry bushes and the different trees and things that I want to start, is all money that I've made selling things, and selling is not easy. So if the money is hard to come, I definitely don't want it to be easy go. So I'm trying to make sure to pick, stuff that's very affordable so I can stretch the money as far as possible. So that's actually how I'm accomplishing this on a budget. So this is actually going to cost me about $15 for my little mini grape vineyard that I'm planting here with the 3 vines. Let's go ahead and get started preparing the bare roots to be planted now. These are going to look just like the berries in the way that they're packed, because again, we got them from Walmart, the same exact place. And I'm going to run through this really quickly because I already went through this when I was talking about berries on the berry garden video. But this is all packing material. And this is all the packing material that came from the berries. And as you can see, it's not soil. It's not soil that they pack them in. It's more like mulch that's kind of decaying. And this is not good to plant them with. So we have to remove all of this material. Okay, so I've gotten to where I feel comfortable. I would feel uncomfortable removing any more of this because there are roots here and I don't want to break any of those. So the next step is going to be to actually put this into a bucket of water. We don't want to put it too deep, so make sure the water doesn't go up too high, but we basically want it to cover the roots and then go up to about here, and then we're going to soak them for a little while we're preparing the planting hole and, you know, mixing in our amendments and whatnot so that these roots can get thoroughly soaked in the water. And like I mentioned earlier, this also does help remove the rest of the packing material. Okay, so now that we're actually here and ready to get the planting done, a couple of things. I first dig the hole a little deeper than it needs to be, and then I put looser soil in the bottom so that when we plant it, it actually has an easier time sending its roots down. So now that we have the hole prepared, we have some nice looser soil underneath, it's really easy to go ahead and plant it. It is a good idea, however, if you can spread out the roots just a little bit in all the different directions, just so that it has an easier time anchoring and then sending its roots out in different directions rather than leaving them in one big clump just straight down. And then another thing you want to consider is what it actually looks like above the soil. Like, it may not be a good idea to plant it like this because now this vine is actually going away from the fence here. So I'm going to go ahead and plant it this way, that way when it grows, it's growing along the fence. So keep in mind not only what the roots look like, but also the top. And then the last thing I do, which I of course have talked about before, is I plant these using the well method, which basically means I actually make the soil around it kind of welled up a little bit to where when I go to water it, all of the water will stay right here in the main area where the roots are. And then over the course of the season, the soil kind of levels itself out, but by that time, the roots will have spread out some more, so it would make more sense for the water to go a little further anyway. So this just helps keep the water where it needs to be. It conserves water and just makes it more effective to where the water goes to where it needs to go and the plant doesn't dry out as quickly. So here's another quick look at our budget-friendly mini vineyard. So we have our purple, our red, and the green grapes over there, all pretty up against their trellis, all planted and nice. And so now is when I want to hear from you. So where are you at with it? Do you like grapes? Do you not like grapes? Do you want to plant them? Do you already have them planted at your yard? What do you do with them? Do you just fresh eat them? Do you make wine, juice, can them into jelly, dehydrate them and make them into raisins? What do you do with them? And which variety is your favorite? What color? And what variety have you had the best luck with? Because that would probably help a lot of people too. So anyway, hopefully, as always, this video was helpful to you. I'm Frugal Green Girl. We'll see you next time.